We will get started. Welcome, everybody. My name is Katie Warren. I'm the Deputy Director at the Washington State Association of Head Start and ECAP. We are really delighted to host Claire Lane today from the Anti-Hunger and Nutrition Coalition. I was appalled to discover yesterday during our parent call on this topic of pandemic EBT that there are over 200,000 children, or maybe it's families, who qualify for this benefit but who have not received it. And the deadline for applying is very soon. So this is a very timely opportunity to make sure that you or your families who you serve, who might have kids who qualify, make sure that we get their applications in, especially during these trying times where everybody can use an extra few $100s to buy food. So Claire, take it away.
Thank you. Hi all. I'm Claire Lane. I'm the director of the Anti-Hunger and Nutrition Coalition. The coalition has been around since the early 90s. We are a statewide coalition that works on state and federal policy advocacy and administrative advocacy, meaning if Congress or the legislature implements new programs, we work really hard to make sure that those programs roll out in a way that really meets the needs of the local communities and is reaching the people that the programs are designed for. And there is probably nothing more in that category right now than pandemic EBT. So I'm super grateful to see you all and all across the state, because I'm gonna give you guys some numbers about what's happening across the state. And then I just would be remiss if I didn't start by saying, I've been working on anti-hunger work for about a dozen years. But before that, my entire background was early childhood development and family support. And way back in the day, I was a Head Start teacher. So I am super, super thrilled to talk to you guys all today, because I know exactly the work you do and the families you serve. And I'm just a huge fan of the kind of high quality early learning and family support that Head Start and ECAP and great preschools give. So thank you for inviting me today. So let's talk about pandemic EBT. Let's talk about what it is and how it works, eligibility and applications. So let's get started, Katie. So pandemic EBT was created by Congress this last spring. It is a new and one-time benefit to help families with school kids buy food. So it's really designed to make up for the meals that low-income kids missed when schools were closed due to COVID. It is on an EBT card, just like food stamps, but a very different program and eligibility and process than food stamps. But pandemic EBT is money that gets put on a card and it's used like a debit card to buy food, and it's accepted anywhere that takes basic food or food stamps. In Washington, pandemic EBT launched on June 28th, which, as you can see, was way after schools closed, not just in March, but after the school year ended. So outreach has been really tough. Schools did some outreach right before school ended in mid-June, but really, since then, it's really been on the community to do a lot more of the outreach, helping families and spreading the word, because so many of the districts just didn't have staff doing that work over the summer. And because it took so long to launch, lots of community organizations didn't really know how the program worked. So it launched in the end of June, and we, advocacy works. At one point we had the latest application deadline in the country of August 31st, but because of how late it launched and some of the rollout problems, we really pushed DSHS and OSPI to extend the deadline for people who have to apply. And it's now Friday, September 11th. So we've got about 3 weeks to enroll about 218,000 kids. So let's talk about how to do that. So who is eligible? It is really fairly simple. I think we'll get lots of questions from you all about eligibility, but it is really for any student who was enrolled in a K-12 school where the school offered the National School Lunch Program, and for those kids who were enrolled for free or reduced price school meals. So I know you all work with the littles, not the school age kids. But we're talking to you today because lots of the kids you have in your programs have school age kids. And in that case, it's really those older siblings that would be eligible. And this is a benefit that works basically like groceries. So if a family has, you know, a 2-year-old and a kindergartner and a second grader, that family is going to get pandemic EBT for those 2 older kids to buy groceries for the whole family. And I think that's really the strong message for you all. It may not be your little kiddos that are eligible, but the families may be because of their older kids. So in terms of eligibility, this is any child that attended a school where all meals are free for all children. That can be called Provision 2 or community eligibility. But it's for wherever a child was qualified for a free meal or a reduced price meal. So it does also include any child that attended a preschool that was based at a K-12 school, where those little guys, instead of getting the child care food program, CACFP, those kiddos would have gotten national school breakfast and school lunch. So it's not a lot of preschools in this state. I think it's somewhere around a couple thousand young kids where there is a program based in a school, not just run by the district, but in a school, and those little kids got the same school meals that the older school age kids got. So those preschoolers could be eligible themselves. We're going to talk about this more, but I'm going to really hammer home this message. Any eligible child, regardless of citizenship or immigration status, is eligible for pandemic EBT, and it is safe for their families to apply. And we will talk more about this, but it's not a public charge, and people really need to understand that this is one of the very few programs available for them. It also includes any child, including kids in foster care or unaccompanied older kids who don't have a parent or guardian. The only requirement, and we'll say this again, is that a child had to have been engaged or enrolled in free or reduced price school meals when schools were closed. And when schools were closed includes all the way through June. And we'll talk more about that.
So Claire, lots of questions about eligibility in the chat about ECAP and Head Start and all of that. Can you clarify exactly which pre-K kids would be qualified for this benefit?
So it would be any pre-K child who attended a preschool program that was based at a K-12 school where those preschoolers got free or reduced price national school lunch. So it doesn't matter whether it's Head Start, ECAP, you know, Seattle Step Ahead, any preschool that was based at a K-12 school where that little kiddo qualified for a free or reduced price meal, and that meal was actually a national school breakfast or school lunch, not CACFP. So It doesn't matter what kind of preschool, it really just matters that the preschool was in a school that served those little kiddos national school lunch.
Yep, so to be clear for all of the Head Start ECAP folks, most of your actual ECAP and Head Start kids are not going to qualify for this. Unless you are in a school who used this instead of CACFP. But we have many families who have other kids, and we want to make sure that they are still getting this money though.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
So we have a couple of sites in our program who the children attend. The site is inside a school district or in a school building, and they eat food that was provided by the school. So they're eating that school lunch. However, the form that parents filled out was the CACFP form.
Yeah.
So here's what I'm going to say to that. I think the best move there would be to contact the school district or the school building and make sure that that program, even if they filled out the form, right? Because it could be that the CACFP form captured the same information as national school lunch and school breakfast, and they could deem them eligible. But I think the best move you could do there is contact the school and verify whether that was national school lunch or whether the school was also doing CACFP.
Right, okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
And I think that was what I was going to say in general. I think if you have any questions about whether your little kiddos would qualify themselves, not just their older siblings, contact the school and ask them, because I will tell you, and we'll talk about this more, the more we can front end some of that information and get it clear with the school district, the easier that application process will be. So let's keep going, because I think we'll talk more about the application and eligibility in the process, and hopefully that will answer some of these. So I also start with not just what is the program and how do we determine eligibility, but really why does it matter? And it really comes down to how much P-EBT is worth, because as Katie said early on, this is real money. It is designed, the benefits are equal to $5.70 per child for every day the schools were closed due to COVID. So from March 13th to the middle of June, if a child was eligible when schools closed, that calculation is $399 per child. So if you have a family with 3 kids who are eligible, they are getting almost $1,200 in food assistance. And when you get this benefit, a family gets the card now, they activate it, and they have a year to spend those benefits. So if the family is feeling like they're all right now, they're not super much struggling to pay their groceries, or they don't feel like they have that need, tell them to apply anyway, because they have that money for another year. And it's a significant amount of money.
Do not let the feds keep this money.
Right. Y'all, I calculated it yesterday. Based on the number of kids we know who are eligible, who have not yet applied, there is $88 million in federal benefits still sitting in DC because families haven't filled out those applications when they're eligible. So we are talking about a significant amount of money for our state food system and economy, and a significant amount of money that is going just to low-income families with kids who are the most likely right now to be food insecure. And this is a significant amount of money. The other thing is, and I'll talk about this in the next slide, well, let's talk about the amount of money. So that is the full benefit. Because it's based on school closures and when a family was eligible and how many days those kids would have missed. If, for example, a family wasn't eligible when schools closed, though I think every Head Start and ECAP family would have been, but for example, if they were full price families, and say one of the parents lost their job in April and applied for food stamps or happened to fill out a school meal application in April, they would be eligible, not for the $399, but they would be eligible for every other month. So April, May, and June. And you can see that down at the bottom of the screen. If a family became eligible only in June, they are still eligible for $85 per child. So again, it's real money, even if they were eligible for only a month's worth of benefits. Next slide. So this is where we're going to talk about public charge and immigration status. So again, I think the thing to help think about is that this functions kind of like food stamps. It is different because it is based on the rules and the eligibility for school meals. School meals has never been a public charge. They have never asked about a child or a parent's immigration status or citizenship. And it does not require a social security number to get this benefit. The application asks for a social security number online, which really is a bummer, and we're trying very hard to get that fixed. But they do not have to provide that, and it won't flag their application or raise any concerns if they don't answer those questions. I worked really closely with the Northwest Immigrant Rights Project for this language. Applying for or using P-EBT will not affect anyone's ability to apply for a green card or gain legal permanent residence. It will not affect the ability of a family member here or outside the US to apply for a green card. It is not a public charge. And I think it's really important to remind families that there is so little that Congress has done in terms of COVID relief that families with immigrants in their household are eligible for, and this is one of the very few. So as an awesome dreamer who lives in Yakima said the other day, like, be unapologetic because this is your right and this is your absolute entitlement. to this benefit, and there is no risk to a family to apply for or use it. Next slide. So we'll talk a little bit more, but I wanted you guys to see this little flow chart, because for the families who were enrolled in basic food or SNAP at any point from March to June, that family should have automatically received those P-EBT benefits on their card. It would have been added end of June or early July. Unfortunately, DSHS didn't send a letter to any families to tell them that they were going to get a big bunch of money dumped onto their account. So feasibly, some of your families got a lot of money they didn't expect in the beginning of July, and there was really no explanation for it. So as you talk to your families, ask them, do you get food stamps? Did you get a bunch of money added to your account in early July? Because that's P-EBT. And to let them know that was a one-time benefit, and we're going to talk about that. It's not like WIC or SNAP that gets loaded every month. That should have been a one-time benefit that they would have gotten. For the families that aren't on food stamps, those are the families, we know who's eligible. We have those school records. Those school records say which kids are eligible for free and reduced price meals, but the information on that school record is not the right data for DSHS to be able to issue an actual card. And that's why families have to fill out an application. It's very simple, and we'll talk about it more, but DSHS is really just matching that application data against the school records, and people need to apply through DSHS. And we'll talk about that process right now. So families have two ways to apply. They can apply online, or they can apply over the phone. I think you all must have DSHS's call center number. It's right there. You also know that a family can ask for a translator, and DSHS has access to translators in all kinds of languages. The application must be complete by Friday, September 11th. And I think that's a really important thing to be telling families. It may take them a little while for that application to get approved, but it has to be done by September 11th because all applications need to be approved and cards issued by September 30th. The feds have been very clear that all the benefits have to be sent out by September 30th. So we'll talk about the application, but if you all have seen Washington Connection, the first screen, there's two different ways to apply for benefits. If a family wants to apply only for P-EBT, on that main screen, they just go immediately to apply now, and then they'll see this screen, and it asks people what benefit they want to apply for. And the answer is right there in the upper right corner. They want to apply for P-EBT. And when they do that, the online application has been simplified quite a lot for P-EBT because, again, nobody needs to provide documentation of eligibility or income. They don't have to provide a lot of information about their household. They streamlined that application a bunch, though not entirely. It still asks some crazy questions like marital status for everybody in the household. And I don't think you need to talk about the marital status of a 6-year-old, but those are questions you can ignore. In the chat, I just included a link to a document and I want you all to download it as I'm talking right now. It is a step-by-step application guide that OSPI and I developed and Northwest Harvest made pretty and streamlined. And it really walks through the online application screen by screen. There are screenshots and it will look like this. And we'll say, you know, click here or just click next or answer these questions, and you don't have to answer those questions. It will make helping families apply so much faster and easier because it is, it will really make it clear what has to be in the application. So let's look at the next slide because that shows a little bit more. So these are the things you absolutely have to have and you have to have right. So the child's first and last name as it appears on school enrollment records. Again, school districts have sent all of their eligible kids to DSHS, and DSHS is matching the application information against those school records. So if, for example, on the school enrollment forms, a family's last name is hyphenated, right? So if my last name were Chaplain Lane with a hyphen, but on my application, I forget that hyphen and I leave a bunch of spaces in between, that's not going to give them an exact match. It's stupid. I understand, but this is how, you know, numbers and zeros work. So it's really important that the families have the exact name as it appeared on school records, the child's date of birth, and the name of the child's school district or school. Those are really the key things that DSHS is matching against school records to determine eligibility. They will ask other questions, but those things have to be there. On the application, when they ask for an address, the address doesn't have to match school records, right? Families move a lot from September to June, and they certainly have moved a lot because of COVID. The address families use in their application is where they want their card to be sent. And it can take up to 30 days to arrive. If everything matches on the school records, it can be as quick as 5 days. So P-EBT can buy food in any SNAP certified store, which in Washington is almost every grocery store, almost every farmer's market, lots of corner stores, lots of convenience stores. And in fact, Washington is actually one of the first states that had an online SNAP purchase pilot program. And depending on the area of the state, families can even use this at Amazon or Walmart for delivery. But just like food stamps, and this is where it follows the SNAP guidelines, it can't be used for things that are not food, like diapers or tampons or cleaning supplies. Also, it can't do things like medicine or vitamins or certainly alcohol because that's not food. The one food group that you can't use because it's this weird rule in SNAP, hot or prepared foods in the grocery store. So lots of the hot deli food doesn't count. You can buy a raw chicken breast in the meat department, but you can't buy like a rotisserie chicken in the deli department. It's just one of the rules. But really, pretty much, you can buy any other food. So let's talk about communication resources, and then I'm super glad there's tons of questions because I want to answer all of them. Let's see, we have, next slide. No, go back a couple. I think that went too quick. Nope, all right, that's the first one, sorry. So I'm gonna put the link, because it's a really complicated link, in the chat, and it might have also been sent in your email. OSPI has a ton of translated materials. They have the flyer that you saw earlier that has the flow chart of eligibility. That is a great visual, very simple language. If you just want to say to a family, here, this is a program and this is how you apply, go call or go online to DSHS. That flyer is great and it's translated into 12 languages. They have on their site the letter that school districts sent to families in June. There are social media posts, those are all translated. And there's really great FAQs that are also all translated into these languages on OSPI's site that I put in the link. That K-12, that www.k12.wa.us P-EBT, you have to use the www, don't ask me. It's a Medium page. It has a bunch of these resources, but it doesn't have the Amharic, the Oromo, or the Tigrinya resources that are on OSPI's site. We have been asking for 3 weeks to get them posted there. I don't know why they can't get it done, but these are the two resources, the link I put in the chat, and then this simple web address. So let's look at the next slide because you can see. So this is what the letter to the families looked like. This is some of the social media graphics. One of them, there's 3 different images with 3 different simple messages. They are all translated. we are finding that there has been really great success when people use one of these images and messages and you put your own preschool's format out there. If your preschool has a Facebook page or an Instagram account, use these. It seems to be working. The flyer that you saw there, that's also something that schools have been using to do communication with families. And then those other resources that are all translated, we've been using those across the state. Every organization I can find that deals with families, we've been encouraging them to use any and all of this. So that OSPI link I gave you, it's their EBT communications toolkit that has all of this stuff. I am going to go again to the frequently asked questions. It is in plain language, at least in English.
Go on the website for the DMV here and put how to obtain the ID. Oh, huh?
Thank you. So those are all the resources that you have to get the word out to your families, and not just to your families. I'm going to really encourage you guys, because again, I'm going to say 218,000 kids, I think, still are eligible and haven't enrolled for this program. I'm going to really beg you all to spread the word in your community every way you can, because this is such a critical benefit for families. So let's go through questions, and I'm going to add another file to the chat box so you guys can see in your community by school district the enrollment data as of a day or two ago. It's a spreadsheet, and you can look up there by your school district. And then I've sorted it also sort of the school districts that have the highest number of kids that are unenrolled, and the school districts that have the lowest percentage of their kids enrolled. And I will say to those of you in Eastern Washington in particular, but also on the peninsula a little bit and Central Washington, the really small school districts have really low enrollment. So they have fewer kids who are eligible and not enrolled, but it just says to me that those communities really aren't getting the word out. So I want you to ask questions now, but after today, I want to make sure that you have this child.nutrition@k12.wa.us. This is the email that OSPI is using to troubleshoot all of the applications and issues for families that have applied and maybe they're eligible, but there have been problems with getting their application approved.
Okay, so I'm going to run through some of these questions here, Claire. One is that I think it was Maria had a family who was rejected when they applied. Can you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, there's been a bunch of those, y'all, and this is why it's such a concern. So if a family applied and they knew their kids were getting subsidized school meals and they were rejected, DSHS is holding on to that application. And typically what they're doing is telling a family to go back to their school district and have the school district verify that the family is eligible. So just because a family was rejected by DSHS, it doesn't mean they're not eligible. It goes back to that data matching. And some of the issues we're hearing about where the information on the school records that got sent to DSHS were maybe not totally accurate. And honestly, the best way to deal with this is to work with the family. I would say if you have the ability to be that advocate with them, to call the school district and walk through that verification and approval, like that acknowledgement from the school district that the family's right and that there was something wrong with the data. Once the school district can verify that, the school district knows exactly who to contact to get that application approved. Once the family can get that verification from the school district and have that conversation, the family doesn't need to do anything else. The school district will send that information on to OSPI and DSHS has that application and they will approve it and send a card.
So what do they ask for when they call the school, Claire? Did they say that they want to talk to the person who's handling pandemic EBT, or is there some sort of trick to getting the right person?
I think you can ask that question. I would say the more direct route will be to say it's the nutrition services or the school food service folks.
Okay.
Generally. But I think the first question is, who is handling pandemic EBT? Anyone answering the phone should know that. If they seem to be confused, then I think you should say, I'm pretty sure the school, the school food service folks, who should I talk to?
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to paraphrase one of these questions. So this program is retrospective, right? It is to pay for your meals from March to June. But is this going to be something that continues into the fall? Is pandemic EBT something? Because a lot of our folks have kids who are going to go into kindergarten. Should they be applying? So that's the question here.
Thank you. That is it will be my call to action. There's an interesting development yesterday. So yes, the answer is it is retroactive right now. Right now, the benefits are for March, April, May, and June, whichever or all of those months a family was eligible. And a family absolutely should be, and all of your families right now, for all kinds of reasons, and again, I'm going to go back to that public charge, all of your families should be sure to complete their school meal application as soon as they can. Lots of districts have their application up right now for the new school year. So absolutely they should apply. If they have kids that were eligible last, if they have kids that were eligible last year, it is perhaps likely that because schools are going to be opening remote, for the school districts that are going to be opening remotely for the month of September, it's looking like those P-EBT benefits will also be distributed for September.
Oh, that's great. So
that is news yesterday. We don't have confirmation, so I don't want you to assume to your parents that that's going to happen, but I want you guys to know that, because that is extra reason for them to get their card in and their application in by September 11th, because they will have, at least I know for sure, if they were eligible for last year and they apply, they will get those, if September benefits are happening, they will get those September benefits on their card added.
So for the kiddos who are going into kindergarten, when you say they should apply, you actually mean they should apply for free and reduced lunch, and then—
Yes, they should fill out that school meal application.
Yes.
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, let me see here. You answered the question about, so on the pandemic EBT application, they ask for social security number. Can people just ignore that area if they don't have one?
Absolutely.
Is this different from DCAP?
It is different from DCAP.
Can you explain what that is for the
yes.
ignorant among us like me?
Not at all. But that's a really good question. So whoever asked that knows what I'm talking about. So Disaster Cash Assistance Program is DCAP. And that is like it's called. So the disaster is COVID. The cash assistance is as it means. It's cash assistance. It's short-term cash assistance that is a program that exists, that's available in a disaster. Before this year, everybody thought about it in terms of like hurricanes and earthquakes and floods. We're now talking about that disaster as a pandemic. And in Washington, disaster cash assistance, or DCAP, has been available for people, again, also regardless of their status. If you are undocumented, if you are a legal permanent resident but not a citizen, you are eligible for DCAP. I will tell you the process of when that program opened and the lack of clarity about the fact that folks who were undocumented or didn't have or weren't citizens, that they were eligible, is literally why when you go to the pandemic EBT, to DSHS's website, There is a message right there front and center about P-EBT, about public charge. And I fought really hard to get that there because they didn't do that for DCAP. And so lots and lots of people eligible didn't apply. And these are basically the two programs out there for folks who aren't documented.
So for Lupe, the amount, what was the amount again that people receive?
So if a child was eligible when school closed in March, they are eligible for the full benefit, that $399 per child. If a child became eligible because their family lost a job or their circumstances changed and they applied for either food stamps or school meals after the schools closed in March, they're eligible for every month that they would have been eligible for school meals.
So is it 218,000 just in Washington who haven't received this?
Yeah, and actually it's closer to 219,000. Yes, I will say it is not, our state is not the only state by far who really had this problem just about the data matching between school records and DSHS's, and it's not even DSHS, it's the EBT company. So almost every state had this mix of automatically issuing benefits to people who were on food stamps and then having some application requirement for school kids. I think our state has had a particular challenge because this program launched after schools closed. And in all honesty to you all, we didn't really have a state outreach plan. You're kind of looking at the state outreach plan right now. So it's been really hard to get the word out.
So if they have this for the fall, it would be for all kindergartners who qualify by income, right? Not just Head Start and ECAP. This is for all kids.
Yes, all school kids.
Yeah, and to clarify for folks, I think that the eligibility for free and reduced lunch, which is what is tied to this, is 185% of the federal poverty level.
Yes.
Right? Yes.
And it also includes kids that go to those schools where all meals are free for all kids. So even if that family is not income eligible, there are certain schools, a lot of them actually in, like, I love Yakima County because a lot of the districts in Yakima County use this option, but they're not the only place where there is enough poverty in that school that it's just all kids get meals for free. Even those kids are eligible for P-EBT.
So just to reiterate, if the programs are using CACFP, those kids are not qualified.
Correct.
Yes.
The little kids in the childcare aren't, but if they have older siblings who got school meals, the older siblings are eligible. Yeah. So you could feasibly have a family with 3 kids. One of them is a preschooler and 2 of them are in grammar school. That family would still qualify for $399 times 2, so almost $800.
So if they do the pandemic EBT, so you clarified that if they already had an EBT card, then they just got their money put on it for this pandemic EBT. If they do this for the fall, is that going to happen again if they got this pandemic EBT, or is it going to be another application process, or what?
So the idea would be, and again, because none of the details are worked out, the idea would be anybody who has already gotten P-EBT or gets food stamps, it would be put automatically on their card. I will say, I have gotten calls from people where a family didn't, they got P-EBT for one of their kids, not both of their kids. So if a family did get benefits through their existing food stamp account, yeah, it's worth asking families, right? This is why it's worth asking them. Did you get a big additional bunch of money on your account? Because you want to make sure that those families got all of their kids accounted for that are school age, because we know some kids got missed.
So I'm just going to clarify again for folks. If you have a kiddo who's going into kindergarten, you should apply for free and reduced lunch because then you might qualify for a pandemic EBT program if it is funded. If you apply for free and reduced lunch, you do not qualify for the retroactive money from last year. Is that
That's
clear
true.
for folks? Yeah, so definitely apply for free and reduced lunch. I think it's probably an open question what happens with September, right? It may be that those guys need to right away do their pandemic EBT application or something. I don't know what's going to happen with September, but do apply for free and reduced lunch, and then there might be a next step for those kindergarten children. But you will not get that $399 for the March through June. That they are not qualified for that.
That's exactly right.
So Claire, since when families who have existing EBT accounts received a chunk of money in June or July or August without an explanation, is it possible that they don't know that they have a year to spend that money?
Yes.
Okay.
So I will say this, no one should have gotten benefits added in August unless there had been a problem with their July account, right? So if they got that money, so it really would have happened. Washington has about a 10-day period where people get their benefits. So it started on June 28th. That would have been loaded onto accounts through that first week in July. But yeah, there was no information. The other thing, and this is a technicality, but I'll just tell you, the way it's working, so nobody, except for the EBT processing company in like another state that like actually transfers money from the, from the grocery store to the feds, the P-EBT money is going to get spent first before their regular food stamps. But even with food stamps, they have a year to use those benefits. So it works the same way.
Okay. I have a vague memory, and my mind is very cloudy these days, of speaking with a family early on who said, I don't know how I'm going to use all this money because I don't have room in my trailer to store all that food. So,
and that is why I make it very clear that families have a whole year to use this money. They should activate the card, but they don't have to spend any of it.
right. I just want to make sure that I don't have families buying food that they don't necessarily need right now.
Yes.
That may or may not spoil if they don't have to.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Kim also said here, this is a good reminder for us to ensure that families are using the same name for all of the agencies that they interact with. We find many families use a different name than that which is on the birth certificate at enrollment. Is that enrollment for ECAP or Head Start, I think. And then use a different last name for DSHS or the school district. I think that it is very complicated.
Yes, it is. The answer is they are matching against the school records. So whatever name the family used when they enrolled their child in school, that's the name that DSHS is going to be looking for. And if a family has any question, like, did we use this name? Did we include that name? Call the school district first before they apply, and that will make the application go much faster.
Yeah.
It'll get it approved.
So there's a question about income eligibility, and it's the eligibility is completely unrelated to child care subsidy or ECAP or Head Start. It is all about whether or not they qualified for school lunch, and that is 185% of the federal poverty level.
Yep.
Is this actually rerouting school meals money to families because schools are not providing meals?
That's a really good question. What I forgot to say earlier is I think it's really important for families to know. So schools, I give them enormous amounts of credit. They had to pivot incredibly quickly and figure out how to do a totally different kind of meal service with no notice last spring. So schools were doing all kinds of things, and they're going to be doing it again this fall of sort of how they do distribute meals. If a family went to their school or wherever in their community that was offering meals for kids and they got those meals, they are still eligible for P-EBT. It doesn't matter whether they already picked up those meals that schools were distributing, they also get P-EBT. It doesn't matter if they're using SNAP, they also get P-EBT. So while it is designed to make up for the meals that schools may not have been distributing or families may have not been able to pick up, it's totally okay that if a family was getting meals, that they could also use P-EBT. So it is totally additional money for families. And from the perspective, schools were still getting reimbursed for the meals they were serving. They didn't lose money on that. This is sort of new money that Congress made available for families.
So Tafra, we can talk later, Tafra, about the school meal, hot meal, cold meal thing. But this is
Tafra, I'm going to give you my email. Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
It's more geared towards the homeless families that we work with too.
Shoot me a message. I'd love to chat.
Okay.
Yeah, it's been super hard for schools to figure out how they're actually feeding kids, and certainly how they do hot meals when they don't have kids sitting in a cafeteria and they're sending meals home.
Yeah, I've heard about this from more than one district. Vancouver was another area where I was hearing that they were different from district to district.
Yes.
Auburn is offering them, but Federal Way and Kent are not.
Yeah. Auburn is an awesome school nutrition program.
All right. Well, I think we've rolled through the questions. Were there any other questions that I accidentally overlooked out there?
If someone wants to unmute, I haven't been looking.
Katie, will you send out the PowerPoint?
Yeah, I can send out the PowerPoint, and in the email that you got from me, the step-by-step and the Medium post with the basic information is in there. I don't think I linked to the other thing, but I will send out a follow-up email with all of the resources.
And I will say, because I helped write the FAQs that are on that Medium page and on OSPI site, this PowerPoint is a little bit like a boiled down version of the FAQs, but I really do encourage you guys to look at those frequently asked questions, because there's a little bit more rich sort of detail, but this PowerPoint basically is a condensed version of that. I do want to make sure that you all know I am always available if you have questions. I may not be able to have an actual answer for how to help when a family's been denied, but I will tell you my answer will be call the school district and help the family through that process. Because if they're eligible, it's just a data matching problem and a school records issue. So I just want to say thank you for all you do for families and the kiddos you serve. And please share this information with the other providers and community organizations and, you know, anyone and everyone in your community that needs to hear this. The flyer is a great way to spread the word in a simple way. But all of those links to the other resources, I really, really would love to see you guys be that ambassador, that there's almost no more trusted organization or entity in a community than their childcare providers. You guys know this, right? Families ask you guys for information and they trust you more than almost anyone else.
Yeah,
you guys are really great ambassadors.
I also wanted to mention that, so we didn't have any Spanish speakers on our call yesterday for parents, and so we're rescheduling that and doing a Spanish version next week, but I haven't nailed down the time. So in the follow-up email that I send out to you guys, I'm going to send that link to the Spanish language one for parents. And that's being done in cooperation with the Washington Immigrant Solidarity Network folks who are so great. So, so thank you all. Thank you so much, Claire. This has been super interesting. And I want all of these 219,000 kids to get that benefit, honestly. So, so thank you guys.
And I will just say one last time, take a look at that spreadsheet before we all leave, go back in that chat and pull out that spreadsheet that shows exactly by school district how many kids, because again, you guys have a powerful voice as Head Start and ECAP and preschools. call your school district and say, how can I help? What are you doing to make sure that P-EBT and school meal applications are part of your back to school message? Make sure your superintendent knows what we know from that enrollment data. Schools are doing their outreach, but they're not getting that data come back to them. They don't know how well or how poorly their outreach is working. You could be the one to say, hey, I just got this information. Did you know? Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Claire, and everybody have a great day. And I might see a few of you on our 12 o'clock check-in with family support in 7 minutes. So I will talk to you guys soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.